The Lizardmen are simultaneously one of the most updated and left behind factions in the game. They have one of the largest lord counts with 7 to choose from, a ton of DLC and one of the largest rosters in the game. However, they're still a bit wonky. The Simple Fun Overhaul, or SFO, is here to try and fix that. So let's see how they get on. But if you want to see how to get these videos on without interruptions, then become a channel member for just $1 a month. All the same videos, just 0 ads. Now, onto the lizards. So first up we have the Geomantic Web and commandments. Sadly, the way the Geomantic Web works has remained much the same, but their commandments have seen some changes to make them a little more useful and dynamic. There are more effects locally and faction-wide, making it a lot more worth going through the efforts of leveling up the web. High-level commandments can lower the cooldown of all spells faction-wide and increase the damage of all units. It's still a little jank and very time-consuming, but now it's actually kind of worth it. The tech tree has also seen a massive number of changes. Instead of these straight lines that each need a specific building to be unlocked, you instead have a series of smaller trees, each with their own focus. You have 4 for each type of units, so skinks, saurus, and creatures large and small. Then you have 4 other trees that come with more campaign-focused effects, such as upgrading income, reducing construction time, buffing heroes, and so on. It gives you a lot more choice, as you don't need a bunch of buildings to get the ball rolling and can focus on what you need at any time. The second page, titled Favour, is where you can now spend Old One's Favour. This is a new resource tracked in the research menu, and it's earned per turn once you complete the final tech in any of the previous trees. These do require specific buildings along with all other techs in the tree to be completed, so this stuff does take quite a while to start rolling in. This then allows you to massively upgrade lords and heroes with powerful stat buffs and abilities. As usual, the way that control affects their settlements and faction have been tweaked. High levels now come with bonuses to local income, line of sight, and physical resistance for local troops. As well as this, you gain extra research rates and Winds of Magic reserve capacity for all armies faction-wide. And of course, low levels do the opposite, as well as lowering control faction-wide. It's more important than ever to maintain high levels to keep every aspect of your campaign running smoothly. Especially once you get a few provinces under your control, those faction-wide effects will stack up quick. Most skill trees have been changed around, especially the Slans, which are now more powerful with tons of spell power, utility, and unique buffs for their armies. However, the biggest winner from all of this is undoubtedly Lord Kroak. His new skill tree is massive and crammed full of value. You have tons of buffs to your entire faction, including unit stats, growth, replenishment, and much more. Obviously, you are throwing if you don't use him, but you really want to farm as much XP as you can to make the most of him as quickly as possible. The lizards have also had their movement stances adjusted in a very particular way. The default movement stance now has different effects whether you're garrisoned or not. When you are, it lowers the army's upkeep and increases XP gain for units and characters. However, when you leave a settlement, your units gain a larger XP boost at the cost of increased upkeep. This makes moving around in default stance pretty expensive, especially as you get a larger, more expensive army. It is useful for quickly leveling up your units, but the gold can quickly get out of hand early on, so it's best to make use of other stances when simply moving around. Channeling is a good option to fill up magic reserves, whilst avoiding extra upkeep, with the only downside being reduced vigor if you get attacked. That leaves the Astromancy stance, which has seen some adjustments, and is now a powerful anti-ambush movement stance at the cost of a quarter of your movement range. No matter what you choose, you really need to put a lot more thought into how you're moving around to avoid costly upkeep. And of course, just like everyone else, they get unit capacities for more elite units, so you'll be more encouraged to build recruitment buildings in a lot more provinces if you want to have a big beefy army. Their economy has also been tweaked, and the end result is extremely expensive armies, both recruiting and upkeep, along with a relatively robust economy that is helped massively by trade. The individual factions have also seen a lot of changes. Hexwattle can make use of alignments, and these are a new currency that a number of factions have access to. They are earned through battles and certain events. Different amounts of alignments offer different effects for Mazdamundi and the faction, and they can also be spent on star reading, which offers you the choice of 4 rewards at the cost of 25 alignments. Lastly, they can be spent on upgrading blessed units with a choice of abilities to further enhance them. Alongside this, he's even less friendly to most factions and becomes more resistant to spells for every level he gains. His training speed for his army has increased, however his upkeep reduction for Temple Guard has gone down. They now gain more armor in his army, and all of his spells have a reduced Winds of Magic cost, making him a real powerhouse spellcaster. The last defenders also have access to alignments and blessed units just like Mazdamundi. However, Kroak can choose to spend them to gain missions, which give you powerful awards when completed, like hefty sums of gold and faction-wide buffs for units. Other than that, he's mostly the same, with tweaks either way for his faction effects. His own army now increases the reinforcement time of enemy armies, but is otherwise mostly the same. The Cult of Sotek lose their cost reduction for the Rite of Sotek, but gain a 25% speed boost for all Skink Lords and Heroes. Along with this, they get access to the unique shielded red crested skinks. Tlaqua also make use of alignments. They can use them to select a choice of 3 effects for 10 and a single turn. These can have some major effects on your faction, so activating them at the right time and choosing the right one can make a major difference on your campaign. He also gains access to the unique ancient Ripidactyl units. His army drops a little of his upkeep reduction, but gains double the missile damage for javelin cohorts. It's a make use of alignments and their effects based on quantity. He also has access to these same upgrades as Kroak, Mazdamundi and the others. Keeps all the same effects but doubles the barrier and defensive supplies. He now also grants his army physical resistance during defensive battles. The Spirits of the Jungle now have access to alignments and blessed unit buffs like the others, and they swap out their regular tech tree for one all their own. This is laid out a lot more traditionally, and of course focuses primarily on combat along with some horde specific upgrades. This also uses Favour of the Old Ones, which is now shared with his Temples of the Old Ones mechanic. Plus, they now gain immunity to trespassing penalties and a little bit of ambush defense chance. Nakai's army gains buffs to both the cost reduction and defense boost for Kroxigor units. And lastly, the Ghosts of Pahuax also have access to alignments and blessed unit buffs just like the others. They swap the skink upkeep reduction for one for lords and heroes alongside gaining immunity to chaos attrition. And Oxyatel's army now gains even more XP when battling chaos. As usual, the roster sees all kinds of tweaks and changes, changing how every single unit works. But as far as new units are concerned, we have these shielded red crested skinks. They lose quite a bit of attack along with most of the armor piercing that makes them so strong. However, they obviously gain shields along with a hefty chunk of defense, making them into a very viable front line and a great stopgap between skink cohorts and Saurus. Their damage is pretty mid, so they will need some help in that department, but keep it a mix of shields and non-shields and you should be set. We also have the ancient Ripidactyl. This is kind of like the Lizardmen version of a dragon, but just a little smaller and weaker. It's still a super speedy flyer and still devastating in melee with tons of attack and damage. Defense is okay, but the low armor makes it very weak to being focused from a range. It's best used for blitz attacks to make the most of that charge bonus, as well as keeping it nice and safe. This in combination with its takeoff ability, allowing it to escape melee easier, make it hard to pin down. And we have one new semi-regiment of renown, the Honor Guard of Hexawatl. These are a Temple Guard unit and they're unlocked by building these stellar pyramids of the southern skies in Hexawatl. These are a very small unit size, but what they lack in numbers they make up for with pretty crazy stat buffs. They have extremely high armor alongside excellent melee stats and great damage even if the armor piercing split isn't the greatest in the world. However, their real value comes from their abilities where they can buff their lord with a variety of effects to make them much more difficult to kill. Now to wrap up with a mod review. On the surface, it doesn't seem like a lot has changed with the lizards, but once you get playing them, all the little changes add up to make a totally new experience. Admittedly, it was beyond the scope of SFO to totally remake the Geomantic Web, but by making it a lot more worth your time, the same mechanic that's been bad since launch is now at the very least worth putting the effort in. The web buildings are now much stronger, and the effects from high-level commandments offer a lot more value to your regions and faction as a whole, so you'll want to make the effort to get them built wherever you can. The tech tree is also leagues better than vanilla. The old version with single lines that require buildings to unlock is such an outdated and boring idea. This new one makes total sense with the focus on the 4 types of units of the faction and the choices of how to buff them. Add on the favour page with late game text offering powerful bonuses for your lords and heroes, and your endgame can quickly reach crazy levels of power. Lord Kroak also needs a mention as he is basically a tech tree in his own right, with tons of text above all areas of your game beyond just himself and his army. And as usual, the changes to the individual factions are great, and everyone feels nice and unique to play. The alignments are a nice little added mechanic that most of the lords have access to. It not only allows you to make more use of enhanced blessed spawnings, but the individual unique mechanics to use them offer some powerful bonuses to those factions that are lacking, such as Mazdamundi and Kroak. Admittedly, the new units are a little thin, but the lizards have one of the largest rosters in the game, so I think it's fair enough. Besides, the few units that are added are fun, useful, and faction specific, so add even more ability to enjoy each lord individually. I think if you come into this looking for something that reworks the Lizardmen and fixes all their problems, then you may be disappointed. The Lizardmen are kind of broken down to the bones, with awkward base mechanics that are kind of annoying to use, and SFO was never going to fix that, since it's not the point of the mod. However, if you go into it looking for some added spice to bring them a little more up to date in terms of power, along with something special to make each lord stand out, I think you'll be pretty pleased with what you get. Personally, I don't think it's pushing the Lizardmen to being one of my favourites, but it certainly makes them a lot more fun, so it's well worth giving a go. But what I want to know now is, what do you think the Lizardmen need? A total rework, double the roster size, or just some tweaks and changes? Let me know whatever you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 mod videos, then check out this one all about the Encampment Stands Force mod. It kind of fixes sieges, but it's also a little bit jank. Check it out.